Hello my loves and welcome back to my channel. Happy 2025, happy new year. I think it is crazy that it is 2025. I think that I'm still in shock, like I'm in disbelief, but I thought that this would be the perfect time to go through all of the books that I read in 2024. Okay, there are a lot of books that we're going to go through today. I know you guys can tell because I have so many books lined up behind me. I read a total of 180 books last year, which is freaking insane. The wrap-up video I did for 2023, I think had maybe 120 books in it. And I thought that that was crazy, and the sheer amount of books that I had to go through was insane. But we're going to do it again, and we're going to go through every single book that I read in 2024, and I'm going to tell you if I recommend them with a simple yes, no, or maybe, okay? We have to do it this way, otherwise I fear that we will be sitting here for hours and hours, and I don't want you guys to have to sit here for 5 hours and listen to me talk about all of these. But if you do want to hear a little bit more about my opinion and about all of these books, you guys can check out all of my monthly wrap-ups, because I have talked about a whole lot of these in my monthly wrap-ups. But this is going to be like a short and sweet on every single book. I'm going to tell you if I liked it, if I didn't like it, if I think that it was okay. Now I have counted all of these together, and I have read 130 books that I own physically, and I read 50 books either on my Kindle, I owned them and I on-hauled them, or I listened to the audiobook of them. So there are a lot of books that we need to get through today, and honestly I'm a bit scared. I'm very scared to have to go through every single one of these books. When I was pulling them out of my bookshelf, I do remember that I loved a lot of them, and I remember the feelings that I had when I read them, and that is just the best thing ever. But I also pulled a few out that I remember not loving, and then I looked at my ratings and I ended up rating them about 3 stars or something like that. So I think that next year, well, this year, I need to be a little bit harsher with my ratings, and I need to sort of come up with like a better system so that when I get to the end of the year again, I can go, yeah, that was a 2-star. Yep, I agree with my rating, because there were a lot of books that I guessed the rating for and I was so wrong. So let's just get straight into this. Now, I've tried to sort of put them in order of how I've read them. Some of them are a bit jumbled, but you know what? Let's just get through it. Let's start, because we're going to be here all freaking day if I just keep yapping at you guys. So before we get into this, I thought that I would give you guys a little bit of some stats that I got from Goodreads on my reading year for 2024. So I read a total of 180 books, read 68,000 pages. My average rating for 2024 was 4.1 stars. So I had a very, very good reading month. However, I told you I've gone through some of my rankings and I thought that I've given some of these books too many stars. So I've got to be better next year, okay? My favorite author from this year was Laura Pavlov. You guys know that I absolutely love Laura Pavlov, and there are a lot of her books in this behind me. Like, there are so many Laura books. I looked at my shelf up there and there are no more Laura books sitting on my shelf. So she was my most read author this year. And I read a majority of romance books. Obviously, you guys know that romance books are my bread and butter. I love them, and you know, I'm just a romance girly through and through. So let's just start with the books. Let's just get straight into it. Alrighty, I've got my little pile here. So the first book that I read in 2024 was Afraid by Laura Pavlov. This is the first book in the Willow Springs series. I really love this one and I would recommend it. And then I followed on with the second book in the series, which is Tangled by Laura Pavlov. I also would recommend this one because I had the best time reading it. The next book that I read was June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. This is an emotional damage book to the max, and I would recommend it in a heartbeat. I loved this book so much, and I think that you guys would really love it too. It is chunky, but it was such a good read, and I absolutely loved it. I then followed on with the rest of the Willow Springs series. So we have the last 3 books, and honestly, I would recommend all of these. I would recommend that entire series if you love small town romances. The third one is Charmed, then we have Sealed, and then we have Claimed. I love them. I love Laura Pavlov. I would recommend these, and I think you guys should read them. We then follow on with Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. This is the third book in the Magnolia Daisy Hates series. I would recommend this in a heartbeat. This book destroyed me. I loved it. I loved it. And I think you guys will see the general theme from January was emotional damage books, because I went on with Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I would 100% recommend this. I loved this book so much, and I think that it was really overhyped on Book Talk, so I was very nervous to read it, but honestly it was such a good read and I do recommend it. I think it was just different, and once I got through the first like 100 pages, I was loving it. I was loving it. Okay, give it a chance. I then read The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. This book destroyed me in ways I could never imagine, and I would recommend it to you guys because it was just so soul-destroyingly heart-wrenching. I just just read it, okay? Just please just read it, all right? And then I went on to Break My Fall by Chloe Walsh and Fall to Pieces. So this is the first book in the Broken series and this is the second book. This is really hard. I would say no. I wouldn't recommend these. I did not love them, and honestly, they're on my shelf still because they are beautiful, and I really gave this book a chance because I know so many people that love it. So I read the second one, and yes, they leave you on a cliffhanger, and that's probably like the only thing that kept me going, but honestly, I'm saying no. I know that a lot of people would say yes, but they were just not my cup of tea. I couldn't connect. And then read Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This book was, I can't explain it. This book is a yes, I would recommend it, but I want you to check the trigger warnings first. There is a lot of triggering content in this book that I feel like a lot of people will not be able to get over, but I really loved it and I would recommend it if you're okay with some of the triggers in this book. I then read the third book in the Broken series because I really wanted to love it. I have heard so many people loving it and reviewing it and raving about it, and I just loved The Boys of Tommen so much that I wanted to love this series, but I just couldn't. So this is a no as well from me. This is Fall on Me, the third one. I have not read the fourth book in the series and I don't know if I will, to be completely honest, but I would say a no on that series. I then read Loving Romeo by Laura Pavlov. This is the first book in the Magnolia Fall series and I loved it. I loved it, and for a while there it was my favorite Laura Pavlov book, so I would definitely recommend this. This is a yes from me. And then I have the Landmark Mountain series by Willow Astor. So the first one is Unforgettable. This one is a maybe. I didn't love it as much as the others. I feel like it was really good, but it's kind of a maybe from me thinking about it now. And then I have Someday, which is the second book. I loved this one, yes. We have Irresistible. This one's probably a maybe as well. And Falling, this was a yes. So this series was kind of hit or miss for me, but I read them back to back to back to back, so there must have been something good in there for me, but looking back at it now, I honestly can't really remember much about them, to be completely honest. I also read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I owned this book and I loved it when I read it, but honestly, it was nothing really that special to me. So I feel like this is a maybe for me. I ended up unhauling it just because I just won't read it again. I won't ever like look at it and go, oh my God, I love her. So I ended up unhauling it. So that one's a maybe for me. I feel like if you love YA, it is a really quick YA read, but I just like, it's just not one of my favorites, so it's a maybe. So we're now getting into February. So these are most of the books that I read in February. I started off with Swift and Saddle by Lila Sage. Yes, I would recommend this. Yes, I love it. Yes, just read these books, read this series. Anything that Lila Sage reads, I can binge, and I love her, and I would always recommend her books. And then I read Lucky Hit by Hannah Cowan. I had never read anything by Hannah Cowan before, and I had a couple of friends recommend this series to me. Now, Hannah Cowan has a few series and a few duets. However, her reading order is very specific, and I have followed her reading order, so They're sort of like, if you looked on Goodreads or you looked on Amazon, you would think that I read them out of order. But if you look on Hannah Cowan's Instagram, you would see that I read them in her reading order. So the first one is Lucky Hit. I would recommend this. I loved it. I thought it was a very solid hockey romance, and I binged it and I loved it. And then I read Between Periods, which is the novella in the Swift Hat Trick trilogy. I really liked this one. I'd say a maybe, only because it's a novella, but I did really enjoy it and it was a quick and easy read. But I would say read it if you're reading the series. Like if you're reading her reading order, just read it because it tells you some things that you need to know later on. And then I have Blissful Hook, which is the second book in the Swift Hat Trick trilogy. I loved this one so much. This is a definite yes recommendation from me. It was just such a good hockey romance, and I feel like these books really pulled me into Hannah Cowan and her writing, and I was really happy that I got recommended them because I loved them. I then got a early ARC copy of Lost and Lassoed because you guys are probably thinking, how did you read that in February? Because it came out later in the year. So I read this one as a digital ARC, and honestly, this is a maybe from me. I did not love Lost and Lassoed as much as I loved Done and Dusted and Swift and Saddled. I had really high expectations for this one, but it just didn't hit the way that I wanted it to, and there was something missing, but I can't tell you what it was. Like, I can't sit here and tell you what I didn't like about it because I just felt like there was something missing in here, or maybe the connection just wasn't there for me, but I did love it. I just wouldn't recommend it as much as the other ones. So I then read The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren and The Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. They are books 1 and 2 in the Improbable Meet Cute series. They are a series of small novellas. They're romance, and it's popular romance authors writing them. I loved these books because I was in a reading slump when I read them. I feel like they are the perfect books to get you out of a reading slump, but I feel like I have to say a maybe because they're not as good as some of the other books that I've read, but I do highly recommend them if you're in a reading slump because they are the perfect books to just like pick you up out of it. They're not long, there's not too much in them, they're just cute, fluffy meet cutes, and you know what, I enjoyed them for that. But if I was reading them when I wasn't in a slump, it probably wouldn't have been anything special to me. We then move on to Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. This is a yes from me. The entire Magnolia Parks Daisy Hates series is a yes. Do not ask questions, just read them. I know that there's a lot of people who don't love these books because of the toxic sort of nature of them, but I love them so much, and there is so much within these books that resonates with me, and I feel like I learned a lot of lessons from both of these books, and they were just such fun reads, and honestly, I love them. I love this series. This is a Roman Empire series for me, and I just, like, I do recommend them. I highly, highly recommend them if you can deal with some of the things that are in them. I then have Off the Grid by Kay Bromberg. This is a Formula One romance. I'd say maybe on this one, it is not one of the best Formula romance books that I've read, but it is still really, really entertaining, and I still really, really loved it. And I do remember some things in here, not a lot of things, but it was a really cute Formula One romance. We then have The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is a yes from me. I thought it was really, really good. I enjoyed it. This is my favorite in that series. You're getting where I'm going with this. So this is a yes from me. The second book is Wild at Heart. This is a no from me, or a maybe. It's sort of leaning more towards no. I feel like the story just got really old and I kind of got sick of the characters, if I'm being completely honest, because you're following the same characters in both of these books. So I did enjoy this one. There were a lot of moments where I was like really sad and I was really happy, but this book just kind of fell really flat for me and I didn't love it. So this one's like a no from me. Sorry. I then have Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. I pretty much read this series. I finished the last Daisy Hates book pretty much on time to read this one when it came out, and this book destroyed me in every single way possible. I loved every single minute of it, and I feel like there are a lot of moments that you can learn from in this book especially, but it is large. Like, she's large, but this book was just perfect. I love Jessa Hastings. I love her writing, and I will forever recommend this series, and I'm sorry if you don't like it. I'm sorry. I then have Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This book is so hyped up on Book Talk. I decided to read it and it's a no from me. I loved the premise of it. I loved the idea of it, but I really just did not like the ending. I feel like that ruined the entire book for me, and it's a no from me. I'm sorry, all you Archer's Voice lovers, but I feel like it was too overhyped for me and it just fell a little bit flat, if I'm being honest. I then have 13 Candles by Sienna Judd. This is a yes. I loved this small town romance, and I feel like no one talks about this series. No one talks about Sienna Judd's books, and I really, really loved it. So this is a yes from me. I then have Forbidden Hearts by Corinne Michaels. This one's a maybe from me. I felt like it wasn't anything overly special. It's a small town romance, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more in there. I feel like we could have had something else to sort of like make it different from all the other small town romances that I've read. Like, I have read a lot of small town romances. You guys know that. You'll see that in all of these books, and I just feel like this wasn't anything too exciting for me. I then have Don't Let Me Fall by Kelsey Ray. This is the first book in the Don't Let Me series. Yes, this is a hockey romance and I loved it. I listened to this on audio and the audiobook was phenomenal. I loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the connection, and I think that you guys will love this one as well. It is just like such a good hockey romance. I then read Stirred by Charity Ferrell. This is the first book by Charity Ferrell I ever read, and I would recommend this to anyone who will ask me about it. I think this book was phenomenal. It was amazing. I loved every minute of it. There was so much drama. There was so much drama in such a small amount of time. Like, I loved it. There are so many tabs that I have in here, and I just read it, please. Just read it, please, for me. I loved it. It was so good. It was so good. I then have Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. I'm going to say maybe for this one. I loved it when I read it. Going back now, the whole love triangle thing was interesting and probably not my favorite part of the book. There were some parts of the book that made me a little bit angry, but I guess that's the whole point of a love triangle, right? I will say maybe on this one. I loved the vibes when I read it. I really, really loved it, but looking back on it now, I'm thinking that I've read a lot of better books, but still good. So I'm still gonna say maybe. I'm gonna say maybe. I then have Smoking Gun by Lainey Lawson. This is the first book in, I don't know what this series is called. I do not know. There's a name for it. Anyways, this is the first book in this series. I loved this book. You can see my tabs. Like, I loved this book, and I would highly, highly recommend it to all my small town cowboy lovers. And the cover is just stunning. I love it. So yes, that's a yes from me. So I then read Craving the Player and Taming the Player by Hannah Cowan. This is a 2-book duet that follows her reading order. This is the Amateurs in Love series, I believe. I actually really enjoyed both of these books. I own the first one. I do not own the second one. I feel like the first one is a yes and the second one is a maybe. So you're following the same characters, and I honestly built such a good connection with both of these characters in the first book. The second book kind of dragged on a little bit for me, but that's kind of how I feel about duets sometimes, because you're following the same characters for 2 books. But I did really enjoy it, so I will say yes for the first one and a maybe for the second one. I also read Tattered Stars by Catherine Cowles. This is the first book in her Tattered and Torn series. It's a no from me. I'm sorry. I really tried with Catherine Cowles this year. I really tried to read a lot of her books because I've heard so many good things. It was an average read for me, and I feel like that one's a no from me, unfortunately. I also read Overtime, which is another novella by Hannah Cowan. This is the second book in the Swift, I want to say like it's the second novella after the second book from the Swift Hat Trick trilogy, and I did really enjoy it, so I will just say yes, but it is a novella. It just builds the story for the rest of the series, honestly. So I then have Don't Let Me Go, which is by Kelsey Ray again. This is in the Don't Let Me series. I really enjoyed this one, so I will recommend it. I feel like Kelsey Ray really hit these hockey romances just out of the park. I loved it. So I also read Sovereign by Rhea Morris Edwards. This was my first sort of dark romancy cowboy romance book. I saw it come up on TikTok and I I thought it was a really, really interesting idea. So I read it and I would say it's a no from me. I don't love dark romance and I feel like this wasn't that dark, but I still just didn't love it. I didn't feel the connection. I don't really understand characters in dark romance. So I think that is just a thing for me. I don't really understand their motives or how they enjoy certain things, but it was a no from me. I'm sorry. I had really high expectations for it because I'd heard so many good things, but I just didn't love it. I then have Don't Let Me Break by Kelsey Ray. This is the third book in the Don't Let Me series. I would recommend this. I really loved it. Look, I really love this series. This is actually where I have finished with the series. I haven't continued any further, but I do want to keep reading the series this year because I feel like it is just going to be such an enjoyable series. I then have Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan. T.L. Swan is one of my favorite authors to date, and I would recommend this 100%. If you love billionaire romances, this is it for you. All of T.L. Swan's books are billionaire romances, and they are spicy, and they are just they're just so enjoyable. I just love them. We then have Saving Six and Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. I cannot put enough words out to you guys to tell you how much I loved these books. These books are my favorite books of 2024. I have not read anything that has sort of topped it. I loved them so much, and I just feel like I just cannot explain to you how much I love them. They are a 1000% yes from me. I will never ever get over these books. I will never get over Joey and Aoife. I cannot. I cannot fathom a world where these people don't actually exist. You're telling me that they're fictional characters. I will not believe you. So these are a yes from me 1000%. If you haven't read the Boys of Tommen series, please go read it because there is I can't. Just go read them, please. I then have Twisted Love and Twisted Games by Anna Huang. These are the first two books in the Twisted series. Twisted Love is a no from me. I got the ick so bad. I really didn't like this book, but Twisted Games is a yes from me. So if you want to read Twisted Love just to get to Twisted Games, okay, do it. I'll be okay with it. This book, you don't really need to read, to be completely honest. I mean, it does introduce you to the characters in the third book, so I kind of get it, but I just feel like this one fell really flat. So if you do read it, don't expect it to be that much, but when you read this one, you just wait for it. They feel like they were written by two different authors, if I'm being completely honest. I then have Offside and The Shutout by Avery Keelan. So I did not like Offside, so I will say no, but I loved Shutout so much that I would say freaking 1000% yes. Read this one, please, but you don't really need to read the first one, if I'm being completely honest. I thought that it fell really flat, and this one just redeemed Avery Keelan for me. I cannot explain it. I also read Falling Off the Cliff by Kenitha P. This is another Formula One romance. I'm gonna say no for this one only because it's written in third person, and I don't really love third person books, and that's just my own preference. But just know that when you go into it, I found it on TikTok and I thought I'm gonna read it, and I didn't really love it. I also read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the first book in the Naturals series. I actually do own this, but I have someone borrowing it at the moment, and I would recommend this one 1000%. I loved that series, and I feel like it is such an enjoyable YA Criminal Minds read. I then read Alive and Wells by Bailey Hannah. I saw this on TikTok and I thought that so many people loved it, so I'm gonna love it. And I really disliked this book. I will not use the H word because that's not very nice, but I would not recommend this. I do not recommend it as a good book. I really just did not like it. And I don't know if it was just me because there are so many people that love that book, but I gave it 2 stars. Let that sink in for a second. And I told you that my ratings I felt were I overrated a lot of books this year, but I rated it 2 stars, so I just want you to let that sink in for a second. Yeah. I then read A Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn. I loved this book. I love this series. Yes, this is a yes from me. I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silva. This is a yes. The audiobook is a yes. Audiobook was phenomenal. I loved it. So this one's a yes from me. I loved it. It's the first book in her Gold Rush Ranch series, and I really needed to read the other series after loving Chestnut Springs. I then read The Wrong Game by Candy Steiner. I think this one is a maybe. Nothing really stood out for me. I didn't feel like it was anything overly special. So that one, unfortunately, is a maybe from me. I then read So Not Meant to Be by Megan Quinn. This is the second book in, I don't know what this series is called. The Kane Brothers, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, don't quote me. Yes. I loved this one. This one was awesome. I then read Wild Love by Elsie Silva. I loved this book so much. Elsie Silva just knows how to get me. She knows how to hook me in and give us good single dad romances. Like, I read this. Like, just if you haven't started this series, read it. Like, just do it, okay? I feel like I am losing the plot a little bit and we're only halfway through. So anyways, I then read Haunted Love by Sheridan Ann. I love this book. I would totally recommend it to you guys. I wish I had a physical copy of it. I loved it. Just read it. I then read A Long Time Coming by Megan Quinn. This is the third book in the Kane Brothers series. This is also a yes from me. I think this series made me fall in love with Megan Quinn because I then started reading a lot of Megan Quinn books, and although the chapters in this book are really long and that really irked me, I still think it was an amazing series and I really, really loved it. I then read A Photo Finish by Elsie Silva. This one's a maybe from me, and I know that is so upsetting. I was really excited for this book because it is Violet's book, and obviously Violet is Anne Eaton from Chestnut Springs, so we see a lot of her, and I wanted to read her love story, and I just didn't love it as much. I don't know why. It just didn't jump out to me from Elsie's books, and I feel like I've read so many of her books now that I know when she's written a good book, and that just wasn't it for me. So I'm sorry. I then read Beautifully Broken Pieces and Beautifully Broken Life. This is by Catherine Cowles. It is book 1 and book 2 of the Subtle Lake series. Book 1 I loved, and book 2 I loved too. So I would definitely recommend both of these ones. I listened to them both on audio, so I don't know if it was the audiobook that I loved, but I do highly recommend them because I think when I read them, they were free on Audible. So definitely go check them out. They were fun suspense romances and I loved them. So I would definitely recommend them. I then read Shaken by Charity Ferrell. This is the second book in the Twisted Fox series. I really loved this one. I would definitely recommend it. I thought that I loved the first book so much, and then I read this one, and I think this is my favorite in the series, 100%. I really loved it. And read Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. This is the most recent book in the Boys of Tommen series. I loved it. I would recommend it 100%. It's not my favorite in the series, but I still thought it was a really good book, and I just loved the story and I loved the plot twist. We are in May now, so we're getting into sort of like my birthday month, some of my favorite reads. I read A Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in the Natural series. I liked it. I would recommend it. I feel like it's just a fun, it's such a fun series. I then read Famous Last Words by C.W. Farnsworth. This is a hockey romance, and I would 100% recommend this. I thought it was one of my favorite hockey romances, and I really loved it. I then have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Yes, I'm not even going to explain why. Yes, if you haven't read any of Abby Jimenez's books, then you are missing out on something amazingly beautiful. I loved this book. It's a yes. It's a yes. I then have Ready for You by Samantha Lee. This is the first book in the Valentine's Bay series. This is a yes from me. I love Samantha Lee, and this is a small town romance. So, enough said. I then have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I cannot believe it took me so long to read this book. I thought it was phenomenal, and it's a yes from me. I think that if you have not read it and you're afraid that it's too overhyped, I was too, but you will be so upset at yourself for not starting it sooner. I didn't think it was going to be my cup of tea, but I really, really loved this book. I then have Irresistible by Melanie Harlow. This is the first book in the Cloverleaf Farm series. This one was a yes from me. I listened to it on audio, so I don't know if that's why I loved it. I feel like if I read it physically, I may not have loved it as much, but it was a really fun audiobook, and I think that it was just like so enjoyable and such a fun small town romance. I also have book 3 in the Sutter Lake series by Catherine Cowles. This is Beautifully Broken Spirit. This one's a maybe from me. I loved the first and the second book so much. The third one kind of felt a little bit flat for me, so that one is a maybe. And then I read Rustic Hearts by Amber Kelly. This is a no. I had the physical book and I actually unhauled it because I didn't love it, and I do not think that it is very I don't think it's a very memorable small town romance for me. So that one is a no. I'm sorry. I also read The Way I Hate Him by Megan Quinn. This is the first book in the Almond Bay series. This is also a maybe for me. I felt like it was too long. I feel like you could have cut 200 pages out of it and it would have been a very good read, but it's a maybe from me. I'm sorry. I then read Against All Odds by C.W. Farnsworth. This is the second book in that hockey romance series, and I loved it. I would recommend it, and I just think it is such a fun, it's just such a fun hockey romance series, and I feel like hockey romance is really hard to get into because there are so many and it's so oversaturated, but she did such a good job and I loved it. I also have Royally Not Ready by Megan Quinn. I think this is a yes. I actually unhauled it because it's nothing special. It gives Twisted Games, I don't know where I've put it. It is Princess and Bodyguard. I really enjoyed it. I unhauled it though because I'm not really, I'm not going to read it again. And I wanted someone else to really enjoy it. So I would recommend it. I feel like you guys would love it. I then, just throwing books around now. I then have Straight Up by Charity Ferrell. This one is a maybe from me. This is the third book in the Twisted Fox series, that's what it's called. This one's a maybe. I didn't love it as much as book 1 and 2. I feel like it fell a little bit flat for me, but you guys could enjoy it, so it's a maybe. I then have The Words by Ashley Jade. This book was phenomenal. Phenomenal. I would recommend this 1000%. I loved it. It is actually in my top books of the year, and I seriously loved that book so much, and I think you guys would love it too. So can you just read it, please? I then have My Temptation by T.L. Swan. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. This is the first book in the Kingston Lane series. Yes. That's all I'm saying. I then have A Front Runner by Elsie Silver. This is the third book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Read it, okay? And then I have the last book in the Gold Rush Ranch series, which is A False Start. Yes. Yes. I'm giving you yeses on these. I then have Legacy by Laura Pavlov. Now, I also read the other 2 books in this series. So we have Peacekeeper and we have Rebel. So this is the Montgomery Brothers series, and I would say yes to the entire series. I loved them. They are small billionaire romances and they were so enjoyable. And I didn't even know Laura Pavlov made billionaire romances, but my oh my, they were so good. So read them, okay? Just read them. I then have Mr. Spencer by T.L. Swan. Obviously, I was going through a billionaire romance phase. This is a yes. I am going to recommend every single one of T.L. Swan's books, so I'm just going to tell you that early because I loved them. And then we have Wild River by Laura Pavlov. Yes. Yes. I don't know. It's my second least favorite in the series, the Magnolia Falls series, but it is still a good read and I feel like you guys would enjoy it, so I'm going to say yes. Looking back at it now. I also read Fragile Sanctuary, which is Sparrow Falls 1, and that's by Catherine Cowles. I'm going to say maybe on this one. It is not very memorable to me, and I didn't really love it. You know that this is a long wrapper when your camera dies midway through filming. So anyways, I was talking about Fragile Sanctuary. So I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, and I told you guys I really wanted to give Catherine Cowles a good go this year, and I feel like I did, and I did enjoy some of her books, but this one just, it wasn't for me. So the next one that I read was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I loved this book so much. I would 100% recommend this to you guys. Anything Abby Jimenez, I would recommend. I'm just saying it now. I feel like she is just such a good author and I love her books so much. I then read Next of Kin by Hannah Bottom Young. Yes, 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 I would recommend this. This book was so different and something that I've never really read before, and I feel like it was such a good read, and I feel like you guys would love it as well, and I cannot wait to read the next book in this series this year. And then I have That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. I read this book on my birthday actually, and I would recommend this. This is the Queen's Cove series. It is a small town romance series, and I really, really loved this book. I felt like it was such a good small town read, and they're not that long either. So it is such a good one, and I would 100% recommend it. I also read Love and Picket Fences by Mandy Romano. I had this book physically and I actually unhauled it. This one is a maybe for me. I feel like I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. The cover is really cute. I did read it in a good like one sitting, but it just wasn't anything special to me, and I feel like it was just another small town romance. I then read The Chase by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the Briar You series. I really love this one and I would recommend it. I feel like anything Elle Kennedy hockey romance I would recommend to you guys, because I have not read a hockey romance book by her that I wouldn't recommend. I then read Vacation Wars by Megan Quinn. I feel like this is a no from me. I didn't really love it that much. I do still have the book. I feel like it was a really good concept and I really enjoyed it as I was reading it. But by the end, it wasn't anything fun. It wasn't anything special. It was just a book, you know, and I feel like this is a no from me. I was really disappointed too because I thought I was really going to love it. I also read Funny Story by Emily Henry. This one is a no from me. I unhauled it. I feel like it wasn't for me. A lot of people love it, but it's a no from me. I'm sorry. I then have Sweet Collide by Ava Harrison. Yes, this is a yes from me. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was so much fun. I read it. It was on Kindle Unlimited, and I thought it was just like such a fun read, and it was a little bit different as well. I then have First Down by Grace Riley. This is the first book in the Beyond the Play series. I really love this one and it is a yes for me. I thought this was such a fun romance book. It's really short and sweet and I really, really loved it. Alrighty, we then move on to The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. I watched the Bridgerton shows. I watched the seasons back to back to back, and I thought I'm going to read them as well. So this is the first book. This is Daphne and the Duke's story. I feel like this is a maybe from me. I loved the TV show, but the book just wasn't as good as I expected it to be. So it's a maybe from me. I then have The Risk, which is the second book in the Briar You series by Elle Kennedy. Yes, yes, yes. I loved this book. Yes. Yes. We then have The Casanova by T.L. Swan. This is the third book in the Miles High Club series. I really liked this one. I think it's a yes for me. I feel like this was a very good book. I didn't love the first book in the series, so I'm really glad that I continued on because this one was really, really enjoyable. I then have Stay With Me by Brooke Montgomery. This is the third book in the Sugarland Lake series. This is a yes. I loved this series and I feel like it just gets better and better, and I just remember every time how much I love this series when I read one of these books. I then read Collide by, I'm gonna try and pronounce it. I think it's Belle Cabra. I think this is the first book in a hockey romance series. It's very icebreaker-esque and I loved it. I thought it was such a good read. I really enjoyed it, so this is a yes from me. I then read Cross the Line by Simone Sultani. This one's a maybe. I feel like it was actually a bit of a letdown for me. I feel like it wasn't that great and I thought that it was good, and then I thought back and it's a maybe. Like it's a maybe. I then have You With A View by Jessica Joyce. Yes, 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 yes. This book itself is so different to anything I've read before, and I really loved it, and I loved all of the aspects of it, and I feel like it was so perfectly written. We then have The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. This is the second book in the Bridgerton series. This one is Anthony's story, and this is a yes from me. I feel like this is when the story started picking up, the series started picking up. I didn't love it as much as the TV show, but it was still a very good read. I then have Iron Flame. She's shiny. Look, she's shining at the camera. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book, so I'm going to say maybe. This is the second book in the Imperium series. I loved Fourth Wing so much and I had really high expectations for this book and it fell really flat for me. I feel like the last 50% was so solid, but the first 50% really was not it. So I'm going to say maybe for this one. I feel like the first half is a real hard slog compared to the second half, but the second half is really worth it. So I don't know. And I feel like I want to continue on with the series, so I had to read this one, and I don't know, it's really hard. So I'm going to say maybe for that one. I then have An Offer from a Gentleman, not The Gentleman, by Julia Quinn. This is the third book in the Bridgerton series. This one is Benedict's story. I loved this book. I thought it actually really pleasantly surprised me. So this is a yes. I thought I was going to get bored of it because it is like a Cinderella retelling type book, but I actually really enjoyed it. We then have A Court of Thorns and Roses. So you guys were yelling at me to read the ACOTAR series, so I did it. I tried really hard. This is a maybe from me. The second book, which is A Court of Mist and Fury, is a yes. So this one is a maybe purely because you have to read this book to read this book. So I feel like together it's a yes, but separately maybe and definitely yes. I loved the second book so much because it is a lot more romance based and I really love the storyline, but the first book just, it's a hard slog, but you do have to read this one to get into the second one, and I do feel like the first one is worth it in the sense to get to the second book because it is such a good book. I then read Rootbound by Tara Jewett. This is a yes from me. I was pleasantly surprised by this book because I did not like funny story, funny feelings. I don't even remember the name of it because I didn't like it. I feel like this pleasantly surprised me because it is such a strong small town romance and I really, really enjoyed it. So that's a yes from me. I then have The Wrong Mr. Rat by Stephanie Archer. This is the second book in the Queen's Cove series. Yes, yes, yes. Read this series. Please just read it. Like, it was such a phenomenal read. I loved it. And I still remember everything that happened in that book, and I read it so long ago. I then have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I'm going to say yes to this one. There were a couple of moments that I didn't love, and I feel like it was a bit, like the storyline was a bit pulled out, but I did really enjoy it by the end. I loved the story and the characters, so I am going to say yes to this one. I then have Play Along by Liz Tomford. This is the fourth book in the Mile High series, and this is 100,000,000,000% a yes from me. I went through a period where I couldn't get a 5-star read, and this eventually was my 5-star read, and you could see that in one of my reading vlogs, and I rave about this book. I rave about this series. I rave about Liz Tomford. Like, she can do absolutely no wrong, and this whole series and this book is yes, yes, yes. I then read A Billionaire Cowboy's Temptation by Aria Sage. This is a maybe from me. I feel like it is a very small cowboy romance. It's enjoyable, but it was nothing memorable for me. I then read Tempt Me, Break Me, Teach Me, and Surrender to Me by K.A. Tucker. This is the first 4 books in the Wolf Hotel series. I read them all on Kindle Unlimited. I would say yes to the series. Book 4, I would say maybe. I feel like the first 3 books were really good and the 4th book was a bit average, and I'm on the 5th book and I will read it this year. I want to finish the series. I feel like it is really enjoyable. It's really spicy and I think you guys would really enjoy it because I thought it was such a fun time. We then have Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. This is Penelope and Colin's story. This is a yes, 1,000 times yes. I loved this book. I love Colin and Penelope, and I feel like they can do no wrong, and I loved it. I then have Under the Stars by Laura Pavlov. This is the first book in the Cottonwood Cove series. First book? Second book. It's the second book. I lie. So this is the second book in the Cottonwood Cove series. I loved it. I loved it. It's a yes. I then read Wallflower by Samantha Lee. Yes, 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 yes. This book is phenomenal. The writing is amazing. Read it. It's the first book in the series, so it's the first book in something new, and I just loved it, okay? So please read it. It is so phenomenal, and I love the cover. I then have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Yes, 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 yes. It is something I have never read before. It is such a new concept. There is like magical realism in here, and I didn't think I would love it as much as I did, and I loved it. I then have The Play by Elle Kennedy. This is also in the Briar U series, and it's a yes from me. It's a yes. I love this series. The whole series is a yes, to be completely honest. I then have On the Shore, which is the third book in the Cottonwood Cove series. Yes, 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 yes. I'm just going to say yes to the entire Cottonwood Cove series. I have more in here, but Laura Pavlov, she does no wrong. She does no wrong. I then have Beyond the Roses by Monica James. Almost forgot. Yes, this book is so sad. Maybe check the trigger warnings before you read it, because I feel like it's very like emotional and there's a lot going on, but I love this book so much, so it's a yes. We then have Playing Hard to Get by Monica Murphy. Yes, yes, yes. This is the first Monica Murphy book I have ever read, and I loved it. And I actually have so many Monica Murphy books on my shelf. So I think this year my goal is to read a lot more of her work. I then have Crossroads by Devney Perry. This is a yes. This book is so small and it's so easy to binge. If you need a book and you're in a reading slump, this is so fun, cute, lighthearted. There's a little bit of like some little like harder topics in here, but it is just such a good read and I loved it. We then have Forbidden King by Laura Pavlov. This is the third book. This is the third book in the Magnolia Falls series. Yes. Yes. We then have Beating Heart, which is the fourth book in the Magnolia Falls series by Laura Pavlov. This is Beating Heart and I loved it. I loved it, yes. Just yes. I mean, you could have guessed that one, couldn't you? I read a lot of Laura Pavlov books back to back to back to back, so I'm sorry. But then we have Before the Sunset by Laura Pavlov. This is the next book that I read in the Cottonwood Cove series. Yes. Yes. I then have Highest Bidder by Sarah Kate. This one is a no from me. I liked the first maybe 40% of it. The rest was just really bad. I'm sorry. It ended up being more spice than plot, and you guys know how I feel about that. So it just wasn't for me. I know that you spicy girlies will love it, but just for me, nah. I then have The Wrong Heart by Jennifer Hartman. This is a yes, yes, yes. This is an emotional damage book and it's love after loss, and I think it is phenomenal. I think you guys will love it and it will also rip all of your hearts out. So read it. I then have Never Lie by Frida McFadden. Yes, I never find a pull to read Frida McFadden, but when I do read them, they are phenomenal and I would definitely recommend this. I then have Burned by Ivy Jackson. This is a maybe from me. I didn't love it because it was nothing special in the small town romance, and I feel like I've read this story a million times and nothing really stood out for me. I then have After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. This is the last book in the Cottonwood Cove series, and yes, yes. Can you guys see how much Laura Pavlov I read this year? Like, looking back at it, I didn't feel like I read much of her, but I definitely read a lot of Laura Pavlov books. I then have Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is a maybe for me. I didn't love it. And I don't know if that's because I read it physically. Everyone says that the audiobook is phenomenal. So maybe for an audiobook, but I don't know. This is the first Elsie Silver book that I haven't really loved that much, and I feel like it is one of my least favorites. I'm sorry. I know my Elsie Silver girls are going to be so mad at me. I also have Homebound by Meredith Trapp. Yes, yes, yes. This is such a fun small town romance and I think you guys would love it. I also have The Bonus by T.L. Swan. This is a yes. I love T.L. Swan's books so much. This is actually the only T.L. Swan book that I do not own and I need to get my hands on it, but I want the man cover. So I'm just gonna have to wait. I also read The Wingman by Stephanie Archer. This is the third book in the Vancouver Storm series. Yes, 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 yes. I loved it. I read it as an arc and I think it was just phenomenal. Such a good read and I was just giggling and kicking my feet the entire time. I loved it. The sheer amount of books that I have around me is absolutely ridiculous. Like, they are all now unorganized and just on the floor. I read The Island Arrangement by Eloise Tynan. This is a standalone book that I read an arc of and I really did like it, so that's a yes from me. I loved it. And I read Sunshine by Michaela Jean Taylor. This is a small town romance and I could not recommend it enough. I loved that book and I want the physical copy of it so I can display it on my shelf. I then read Ricochet by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the second book in the Addicted series. This is a no from me. That's all I'm gonna say. I then read Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is also a no from me. It just wasn't it. I'm sorry, it wasn't it. And then have Addicted for Now by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is also a no. I'm sorry. I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I then have Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I really tried to give this series a red hot go, and I would also say no to this one. And I am waiting to read Daisy and Rack's story because I feel like that's what I'm really going to love. But for the first couple of books in this series, it's a no. It's a no. I then read Cash by Jessica Peterson. I loved this book so much, and this is a yes, 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 yes. The main female character's name is Molly, so take it as you will. Take it as you will. I also read You're It by Lucy Harper, and this is a no from me. It was her debut novel. I bought it because it had a really cute cover, and honestly, I didn't love it, so I'm probably not going to read the rest of the series. I then have My Rules by T.L. Swan. This is the second book in the Kingston Lane series, and this is a yes, 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 yes. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I then have Beneath the Stars by Emily McIntyre. This is a small town romance, and it is the first book in the Sugar Lake series, and this is a yes. I thought it was such a good small town romance, and I didn't like the Never After series by Emily McIntyre, so I'm really glad that I loved this one. I then read Mustang Valley by Sienna Judd. This is the second book in her Starlight Canyon series, and it's a yes. I really liked this book, and I love Sienna Judd. On the home stretch now, okay? We are so close, I promise. So the next book I read was A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. This one was really good, and I would recommend it. Actually, maybe. It's a maybe from me. I don't know. I thought it was going to be a lot better than it was, but it was still an enjoyable read. I then have Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the third book in the Twisted series. This is a yes from me. I really loved this book. It was so much fun. I then have Holding the Reins by Paisley Hope. Now, this is one of my top reads from 2024. This book is so good, and I highly recommend it because I think you guys will love it. I then have Stay by Willow Astor. This is the last book in the Landmark Mountain series. This one is a no from me. I feel like it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I then have Butcher and Blackbird by Brynn Weaver. I was really nervous to start this book. I was very scared, but I loved it. I listened to the audiobook of it. So if you're thinking about reading it, the audiobook is phenomenal. So please check it out. It is so good. It's a yes. I then have The Dare, which is the last book in the Briar You series. This is a yes. I loved it. I feel like all Elle Kennedy's books are so good, and I do highly recommend it. I then have In Your Dreams, Holden Roads, which is the third book in the Queen's Cove series. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. I then have The Boyfriend Goal by Lauren Blakely. This is a yes, yes, yes. This was so good. I love this book so much, and I have a new love for Lauren Blakely now. I then have Tempt Our Fate by Kat Singleton. This is a yes. This is the second book in the Sutton Mountain series, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a good read. Guys, this is my last pile. This is my last pile. You guys should be so excited. I have A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is a maybe/no from me. I did not love this book, to be completely honest, but I have heard that the last one is better, so that's essentially why I read it. So I will keep you updated on this one if I don't throw it on the floor. I then have Sunlight by Devney Perry. This is the second book in the Haven River Ranch series. I loved this one, but it's kind of, I liked this one, so it's a yes. We then have The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in her new series. I think it's called the Campus Diary series. And this is a yes, yes, yes. I loved it. Then we have Tame the Heart by Ava Hunter. This was such a good book. I would highly recommend it. I loved it so much. I then have The Striker by Anna Huang. This is the first book in her new series, which is, I cannot think of the name of the series. Anyways, no, flat no. I enjoyed the first bit of it, but it was too long and it was kind of boring. Sorry. I have A Love Letter to Whiskey by Candy Steiner. This is a yes, 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 1,000 times yes, 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 yes. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it, I loved it, and you will too. We then have the last book in the Magnolia Falls series, which is Finding Haze. This is a maybe from me. I love all of Laura Pavlov's books, but this one just was not my favorite, and it's a maybe. It's a maybe from me. I then have Breakaway by Grace Riley. This is the second book in whatever series this is. Whatever this series is. I am going to say a no for this one. I didn't love it. I feel like it was more spice than plot, and it kind of ruined the whole story for me. I then have a lot of Christmas books, okay? So I read My Favorite Holiday by Lauren Blakely. I loved it. It was such a good book. I highly recommend it. I then read My December Darling by Lauren Asher, and this one is a no from me. I didn't enjoy it. I'm sorry. I really didn't. I then read A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julia Murphy and Sierra Simone. This is a maybe. I really love the start of it, but I feel like it could have been a whole lot stronger. So it is a maybe. It's not one of my favorite Christmas reads, if I'm being honest. I then read A Festive Feud by Maren Moore, and this is a yes from me. I love this series. I also read The Christmas Fix by Maren Moore, which is the third book in this Christmas series, and I loved that one as well. So they were some really, really good Christmas books. I then read Christmas at Fox Ridge by Bailey Hannah, and this is a flat no from me. Nothing really happened. It was kind of boring. I'm sorry. I then read Chaser by Charity Ferrell and The Last Round by Charity Ferrell. So that is books 4 and 5 in the Twisted Fox series, and I loved both of them, and I would recommend both of them. I then read A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J Maas. I read this because it is a Christmas novella and it was Christmas time, so I thought I would give it a go. And I agree with most of the people on Book Talk when I say that this book is boring, and I feel like it was unnecessary, and I wanted to stop reading it so many times, and it took me so long to read it, and it's that big. Like it wasn't for me. So I am up to the last two books that I read in 2024. So the second last book that I read was East of Eden by Brittany Louise. Now, Brittany is one of my very, very good friends that I met through Book Talk. I love her so much, and she's just written her debut novel, which is not out yet. So you cannot read it, but it was so good, and I highly recommend it, and I am about 100% sure it's going to come out early this year. So I will keep you guys updated on that, because I absolutely love that book and I want everyone to read it. It is very much like Magnolia Park's vibes, and I really, really loved it. And the last book that I read in 2024 was Only Mine by Laura Pavlov. This is the last book in the Honey Mountain series. It is the last book that I had to read by Laura Pavlov. I'm now up to date, and I would recommend that book so hard. I loved it so much, and I know you guys will as well. So that is my 2024 reading wrap up. We have been here forever. I feel like I've been sitting in front of this camera for years, but thank you guys so much for sticking through. If you're still watching, congratulations. I cannot believe that you are listening to me yap for however long this video is going to be. I love you guys so much. If you want me to post a video about my reading goals for next year, please let me know. Well, not next year, this year. Please let me know. My overall reading goal for this year is 100 books. It was 100 books last year, and I way overshot that, but I'm going to continue having my reading goal at 100 books because I want to read for fun. I don't want to read to push myself for a number. I mean, look how many books I read this year. I feel like this was insane, even considering I was in the biggest reading slump of my life from October pretty much to the end of the year. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching this entire video. Do not forget to like and subscribe. And I also want you guys to tell me how many books you read this year and what your favorite book of the whole year was. I really want to hear how all of your guys' 2024 reading went. So please keep me updated. I love you guys so much, and I will see you very soon. Bye.